Folks, good morning and welcome to another episode of Steelers Morning Rush. I'm Alan Saunders. It is Friday, April 25th. The Pittsburgh Steelers have their first round draft pick, and it is Derek Harmon, defensive tackle from the University of Oregon, a pick that was made with no controversy or angst whatsoever last night. I'm joking. Obviously, as it seems like a good percentage of Steelers Nation wanted the Steelers to go a different direction. In fact, I did a little bit of research on that last night before the draft. I tweeted out a poll on Twitter before the draft saying who do you want the Steelers to pick, and 37% of the 916 people who voted got what they wanted because Derek Harmon was the favorite, but 26.6%, second place, said they wanted the Steelers to pick Shedeur Sanders. So, of course, if only 37% of people wanted Harmon, that meant that 63% of the people wanted someone else, and I think we've been hearing from them over the last few hours. I wrote a story this morning at SteelersNow.com. This podcast is going to serve as a bit of a companion to that, as I do from time to time here. And I think, here's what we should learn from this draft class, or from this draft pick. The Pittsburgh Steelers are sticking to the plan. They had a plan coming into this offseason. The plan this offseason was defensive tackle from all the way last year, from them not getting a defensive tackle in the 2024 draft class. Basically, when they took Mason McCormick sort of unexpectedly, right? They had that one pick where they could go a number of different directions, decided to go D tackle, offensive guard, left D tackle on the board. That and wide receiver, kind of the two big positions. They had needs still exiting the draft last year. And then obviously Roman Wilson's season gets wrecked by injuries, so he wasn't able to fill the wide receiver need. They flirt with Ayuk, don't get him, end up with DK Metcalf. But all through that time, D tackle was still there, simmering. And then talking to Mike Tomlin last night, you can bet that the way the season ended with the Steelers defense, which, by the way, was very good overall over the course of the season, the sixth best run defense in the league, but to get torn apart by your rival twice in a matter of weeks at the end of the season, finish on a 5-game losing streak, give up 200 yards rushing to Derrick Henry in the playoffs, that certainly made defensive tackle a bigger priority for the Steelers this offseason than it already was going to be. And it was already going to be one. And we saw it from the very beginning of the pre-draft process. Mike Tomlin in Mobile, Jalen Milroe's there, Jackson Dart's throwing. Who's he looking at? Walter Nolan. Aeneas Peebles, Josh Farmer, Yaya Black. Not paying any attention to those quarterbacks whatsoever. It was obvious from the start the Steelers really wanted a defensive tackle. Get to the combine. Who are the combine formals? Yeah, sure, there's some quarterbacks mixed in there, but it is hitting all of the heavy hitters at defensive tackle. That's where they first got exposed to Derek Harmon, Kenneth Grant, and a bunch of these other guys. And so this was always the plan. And also, during free agency, the plan at quarterback, which, I think throughout this process, the Steelers have thought they were going to have a stopgap at quarterback until the quarterback was going to be the last piece, right? They were going to build up through the trenches first, then they were going to add the quarterback. And so the plan was always to have some stopgap at quarterback, whether it was Russell Wilson or Justin Fields or Aaron Rodgers or someone like that. As the process went on, and that became a bit of an uncertain situation for the Steelers. At the same time, Shedeur Sanders falling down draft boards. I do think the Steelers really considered going away from the plan, cutting the line at quarterback, saying, okay, Sanders is here now. How good is the player that we're going to be able to get in 2026 compared to him? Is this the best we're going to do at quarterback? And they didn't settle. They said, no, we're taking the D tackle. We're sticking with the plan. And right now, the only thing you can really do from an evaluation standpoint is say that they're sticking with the plan. They had a plan. This was always the plan. They considered, did their due diligence, did their work, did their homework, considered going a different direction. They stuck with the plan. They got a player who I think is really good. Got a really good pick for 21. I think it was almost impossible for the Steelers to make a bad pick, given the board there. Really anything other than like Jackson Dart pretty much would have been a good pick. And so they made one. Amari and Hampton probably would have been great. And we'll see. This pick will be judged not just on how Derek Harmon turns out, but also on how Shedeur Sanders turns out, and also on how the Steelers are eventually able to fill their quarterback need. If Shedeur Sanders turns out to be pretty good, but the Steelers wait until next year and Drew Aller turns out to be great, that doesn't matter. If Shedeur Sanders turns out to be pretty good, but they wait until next year and they land, Lenore Sellers, who then turns out to be a bust, and Shedeur Sanders is above average, then, it's probably not going to be remembered well. I don't expect Derek Harmon to be this kind of all-pro player. I think he's a really good player. I think he's a good pick for 21. Nor do I expect Shedeur Sanders to be an all-pro either. But, I think he's a player that it's going to be hard for him to prop up the value of this pick all on his own when compared to a quarterback if Shedeur Sanders turns out to be pretty good, especially if the Steelers don't end up doing better than that when they go to quarterback next year. So, just like defensive tackle was the obvious need at this time last year, it sure looks like we're setting ourselves up for another quarterback offseason for next year. And by the way, it's a really good quarterback class, and the draft is in Pittsburgh. So, from a lot of ways, that makes sense, but we will see how it goes. And also, we will see how they're able to fill their stopgap situation in the meantime. Right now, it's Mason Rudolph. Will it be Aaron Rodgers? I don't know. There probably isn't another one. And then we'll see what happens in the later rounds. Will they target Jalen Milroe, Quinn Ewers, Will Howard, someone like that? That can certainly change the process as well. All right, folks, that's all I got for this morning. Make sure you go to SteelersNow.com and check out that article, as well as everything. We got a ton of content coming up and already out, but updated big board, second round mock draft, all kinds of stuff coming out over the course of today. So definitely want to be over there checking all that out. We are expecting Derek Harmon to be in Pittsburgh this afternoon at some point, and then the second round of the draft starts at 7, although the Steelers not currently scheduled to pick until number 83. That's a few hours into this thing, so maybe around 10 or 11 or something like that. All right, that's all I got for this morning. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe and hit that bell for notifications here on the YouTube platform so you don't miss anything. And we'll be back soon with more from the South Side and Steelers Afternoon Drive with me and Smitty at 6. Until then, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching, and enjoy.